Welcome to WLNM, the web novel and manga review, hosted by Zeke Changuris.
Welcome to WLNM, the web light novel and manga review podcast. We are dedicated to bringing our listeners the very special artists and writers that are part of this amazing explosion of creativity. They give us the stories that inspire us and make us want to write ourselves. We'd like to welcome Adam Ladner, the author of the 3-volume original English light novel series, Restart Again. Welcome, Adam.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, let's get right into it. Describe Restart Again for me. What universe? What kind of universes am I getting into? What kind of story am I expecting to see?
Sure. So, Restart Again is perhaps indicated by the name an isekai story. But we very quickly learn that it is not the first time our main character has been isekai, but the third time. So we're simultaneously going through and experiencing a fantasy isekai story, but also kind of dealing with some backstory from past lives and maybe dealing with the fallout from that.
Okay, so kind of like a Inception and Sekai.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting
it. Yeah, you've not only have the trauma from one life, but 3 lives. So,
exactly.
But please tell me right off the bat, is Truck-kun the culprit each and every time?
No. Specifically not.
Okay, so tell me a little about your hero.
So we got our hero Lux. When we first meet him, popping up in his third isekai, he's maybe understandably a little bitter. It's as we learn through some maybe not sparse, but we learn through some tasteful flashbacks. He sort of had that very typical protagonist hero adventure in his first life, but then maybe realized that if you're going to keep doing that again and again, that has a bit of a damper to it. So he's sort of just trying to find his way, stay away from everyone, just find a way to live and not deal with that when we meet him.
Okay, it's kind of like if Scott Bakula had tried to retire in Quantum Leap.
Exactly.
Like, I'm tired of fixing what was wrong and now make it right. I just want to like kick my heels up and go fishing.
That's exactly it.
So, what got you started as a writer? Were you always a writer? Were you always a creator? Or is it something that, like many of us, came later in life?
So yeah, I wouldn't say I was always a writer. I mean, going through, at least through high school, my only exposure to writing was like English class, and I kind of resented my English class. So that definitely wasn't the starting point. But I started playing Dungeons and Dragons when I went to college.
Okay.
And our group was very much into homebrews. Like, we didn't just buy the, off the shelf, Dungeon of Dreadmore or whatever you want. So it started with making a setting and then being like, oh, this is kind of cool. Then you flesh out stuff. And then I've seen a meme where it's basically, I wanted to write the world and write the characters. And I learned that wasn't playing D&D, that was writing a book. My initial kind of foray into writing was like 5 years ago when I decided to kind of sit down and write an actual backstory for one of the characters I had played in a game. And I got like 50 pages into it and had a pretty good time, but never having written anything before, I kind of set myself some traps that I fell into, and that project just kind of fizzled out.
But that is not that strange of a story, and because I've met other writers who their first universe building, their first character building came from RPGs, and it is a good step. I wish they would take that step in. I would love to apply that step in a writing class, because it makes I find it makes it more accessible, and anything I can do to make creativity more accessible would be great. Um, but it's very hard sell. You still have the old fogies who are like, Dungeons and Dragons, it
Yeah.
must be Satan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And
I think there's probably a lot of ways to find passions for, kids in school and, I wouldn't say trick them into doing it, but make them realize that, like, English class isn't just reading Shakespeare and writing book reports on that kind of stuff. There is applications to creative writing that are very intertwined with your current interests. You just kind of have to see it.
hey, I always and I've said it before, uh, I view writing prompts are the same as fan fiction.
Hmm.
It's you're taking a structured story and structured characters and running with it, and that's what a writing prompt is. There's the same thing you get in school. A lot of times in English class, they give you a prompt and you write from it. Well, why not just let them take that step and be like, so you want to be a shinobi? Go for it. How does this happen to you? You
Yeah.
know, you apparently wield a curse, like in Jujutsu Kaisen. Um, Go for it. I love giving my students the chance to be creative in my classes, and though I teach technology, I do everything I can to open that up for them, so they can at least use those creative minds that some of them have, and some of them do a really good job at it. So
Yeah.
yeah. Hey, so did you do any fanfic getting started? Or
I didn't actually. My writing history is pretty short. Um, in terms of actually sitting down and writing stuff, it was that character backstory, a very fledgling story where I tried to do some co-writing with a couple friends, which just
that
scheduling and that kind of
that can be
stuff.
very, very difficult.
Yeah, I'll say it was scheduling that ended that. In to be kind, but that right right around after that is when I started getting the kind of the seedlings of my current story.
It's one of those things, like you said, where you're talking about trying to be very polite, talking about co-writing. It's that in itself is a talent to write with a partner, and
Yeah.
you need the exact right chemistry to do that one.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to write with a partner at times, and then I'm like, yeah, this is not, this will never work.
Yeah.
um, so what what would you say the in Restart Again is the element of the structural element that you're most proud of? What do you think you came up with that really has fleshed this out to truly be your story? Because I mean, isekai is a pretty broad genre.
Yeah, for sure. Um, when I initially started writing this story, it was actually because I had watched a couple of seasonal animes that were just they were isekais because that was just exploding, which kind of still is. But they were just like I was like these are so boring and formulaic, and I know what's gonna happen, and it's just I'm not having a good time with it. And I decided there's so many avenues and like very unique aspects of isekai that don't get explored. I can't say I'm the most versed person in watching anime and reading light novels, and I'm sure they've all been touched on in one way or another. But even the idea of like being isekai multiple times, or even what the ramifications of that would be, um, and I'm pretty happy with the way that I've been telling multiple stories. There's obviously the current story where Lux is going through the world he's actually in, and then you get just little tastes of the other two lives that he's been in. And it's sort of three different styles of isekai at once. You get the first one, and he's all like bright eyed and power adventurer kind of thing. And then the second one, where it's a very miserable experience. And then the third one is very jaded. Um, and I've been having a good time going through those, pulling aspects from the first and second lives that kind of tie into the way the third one's going. So I'm not just doing flashbacks for flashbacks' sake.
Right. Right.
So I think I would be most proud of trying to bring that new approach to it.
So, have you found yourself at times? You talked about in your early attempts that you found yourself falling into traps. Do you still find yourself writing yourself into a corner?
So I put down some very specific rules for myself when I started writing this one based on the issues I had with my old projects. And it's obviously, everyone has their own writing style and nothing will work universally. But for me, I know that I can't skip ahead in my writing to write anything beyond where I am currently. Like I can't be like, oh, I had this great idea for a chapter 4 chapters from now, so I'm just going to write it. Because as soon as I have to fill in a gap between a chapter and then something in the future, it completely sucks all the creativity out for me. Because I'm very much like a gardener in terms of my story progressing. I'm not an architect at all. I have very vague points that I want to get to in the future, and then I just kind of let the story go and find its way there. So as soon as I put like a hard and fast, point in it, I can't do that gardening anymore, and it kind of sucks the soul out of it. So avoiding that has been really helpful. Obviously, with editing, I've had to chop some stuff out. It's just like I've been writing for a while, and I'm just like, this kind of went somewhere I don't want it to. And you take a couple pages and you put them in a separate document for maybe I'll need this later. You leave yourself some room.
So you're more of a discovery writer than a writer who plots everything out.
For sure.
Now that's a fun way of doing it, because at times things surprise you. Do you find that is one of the best parts of your of writing as a discovery writer? You're like, wow, I didn't see that coming, and I should have,
for sure.
And I should have seen it coming, because
Yeah.
I'm the god of this universe, so I really should have thought of that.
I should know all the thoughts of these people, but apparently I don't.
Yeah.
I've definitely I've had plot points and entire arcs that I'm like, yeah, I'll get there eventually. And then as I'm writing, I just kind of look down at my notes, 50 pages later, I'm like, well, that's never going to work. Like things are so different now. And I just chop it and then go on my way.
Do you have any post-traumatic stress from doing that, though? You're like, I put all this time into this chapter and it's just not working.
I've never gotten that far. I think 4 pages of like fully written stuff has been chopped out at once just because it didn't go anywhere. It's still saved in a Google Doc somewhere. It has some very sparse like world building that maybe I'll use someday, but it does hurt. You put time into it, and then to chop it out, you're like, oh, that was, I write pretty slowly, so like 4 pages is like, oh, that's like 4 days. It's like 5 days of work.
Yeah, I mean it can. I've tossed entire chapters before, or rewritten, because I tend to write and then reread and rewrite at the same time.
Oh.
And so there are times where it has really helped, but then there are other times you're like, oh crap, what did I do to myself? So do you do a lot of drafts? Or are you
So I don't do a lot of drafts. I take a long time in my writing. I've seen it a lot. Like I follow quite a few authors on Twitter. I have my separate account for writing stuff, which has basically become my main account, and I don't use my other one anymore because it's so much nicer to just follow art and writing accounts. But I see a lot of people, they're like, well, I wasn't super happy with it, but I got it down so I can come back to it later. But for me, that actually kind of feels limiting in the way that writing a future chapter does, where if I get a lot of my inspiration from discovery, if I didn't discover the things that I would have in that chapter because I didn't put enough time in, or I didn't like flesh the things out that I wanted to and just planned on doing it in the second draft, I would kind of miss a lot of stuff, and the story wouldn't get as interconnected as it is maybe. So I find myself not doing a lot of drafts, but a very, very heavy editing pass when it's done.
So before we get back to before we go to my next question, do you have a trusted reader, a trusted editor that does that first pass for you, or?
I do. I as I'm not as I'm writing, but once I have a full draft for a book finished, I actually post the whole thing in its entirety on Royal Road.
Okay.
And I put it out like 2 chapters a week just until the whole thing's out. And I obviously get I get minor stuff from there. Like obviously if I have typos or like if I contradicted myself 2 sentences in a row, like someone had an axe and they have a sword, that kind
Right,
of thing.
right.
I get that. I don't go to Royal Road for plot advice. Um, but I have an editor. It's a friend of mine who is in college for many different writing disciplines. Uh, and we once I have a draft done, I send it to her, and she bleeds all over that thing with red ink.
Yeah.
And we have some good discussions on that.
Yeah, for me, it's my wife, and she she's good at translating what I think I'm saying into actual words.
I know the feeling.
um, do you work in a science field? So is this kind of writing? Uh, was it an adjustment to do this kind of writing, or is writing in the science field the adjustment?
Oh, my work is much more like bench work.
Okay.
I don't do a whole. I'm actually writing a presentation right now, so it's kind of funny to have to deal with that. But most of my work is data, not data entry, but manipulating data that I get from tests. So there's not much crossover with the writing there.
So you're a fan of Excel. I see.
Yeah, every day.
Yeah, I teach Excel and totally, totally enjoy teaching kids all about spreadsheets. Did you know you can do a pivot table? This is how it's done.
Yeah,
Making,
it's a.
making pivot tables sexy.
I think it might be overlooked, but Excel is like, not to derail this, but Excel is like just the most versatile thing. You think of it as spreadsheets and you just like put some numbers next to each other, but it can do anything.
Yeah, for me, that brag is for PowerPoint. PowerPoint is the most underrated graphics package you will ever deal with. It's so easy to use, and you can create almost anything. So you can insert Excel
Mm.
into PowerPoint. So there you go. Yeah, make it real nifty. Okay, enough office nerding.
Yeah.
So, what what's your favorite type of scene do you write to write? Are you like, all right, I can't wait to describe this place, or this conversation is where I'm gonna really show the reader what's going on, or is it action? I find action the hardest thing to write.
Mm. I think in terms of writing it, I enjoy dialogue the most, because if you have characters you enjoy and characters that you've fleshed out, it is sort of like multiple people having a conversation, so you can kind of just have fun and see where that goes. This person is stubborn, and this person feels this way, and it's just it is that pure discovery as you're going through and having that conversation. I do very much enjoy writing combat, and it takes me a very long time to write combat scenes, just because I want to make sure that everything flows so you can always see where the characters are going and what's happening. You don't have that luxury of animation where you can just see it. You have to say, there's someone on my left and there's someone on my right, and I take a step this way, and uh it takes a very long time for me to write it, but I do enjoy it.
To me, that's always been one of the hardest things to write, is been action.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, I could build you 1,000 worlds in less time than it would take for me to write an action scene.
Yeah, the hardest part of volume 3, which is just about to release, it took me I don't know, it must have taken me 3 weeks to write this one action scene because I knew it was this pivotal moment, and I was like, I've been thinking about this forever, and I'm finally here, and every word has to be perfect, and it just took forever to get that done.
So you must to write. I think to write you need to read. So what authors have you looked at that help inspire your writing style, or that you're like, this is the kind of thing that I'm aiming for?
It's an interesting point. I wrote a blog post about that recently, actually, and I would say that my writing style for my book is most inspired by Christopher Paolini with the Aragon Inheritance series.
Okay.
That was definitely like a formative moment for me as a kid reading those. I mean, as I grew up, because those came out, 2 or 3 years apart for each book. Uh, but I kind of cut my teeth on Lord of the Rings when I was like 11.
Okay, that's some hefty reading.
Yeah, I didn't quite get it my first pass.
Tolkien ain't that easy to read, and don't try and read the Silmarillion.
Silmarillion, yeah.
Don't even try and read that. That's like reading what is it? Jabberwocky.
Yeah, yeah. I actually have read the Silmarillion, and it is like that. But yeah, so I would say probably my writing style is most influenced by the Inheritance series. Obviously, I read Game of Thrones at the same time as I was going through high school, and that was it's not resolved yet.
No.
But I enjoyed what I read.
And it's interesting the way each book is from a different perspective, so that really it really shows you interwoven story.
Yes, it's a very, I wouldn't say unique, but it's a masterful way of bringing multiple viewpoints together. I try to keep those things in mind.
Yeah, I'll just wait for more HBO. There you go.
Yeah, yeah.
So, is there a light novel series that you've read that kind of stands out in your mind, that is one that you're like, yeah, this was a fun read that you'd recommend to others?
Yeah, so that's the fun part. I've never read a light novel before.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I read
take you about 6 hours, so when you
yeah,
can block out a day.
yeah. To say I have plenty of them because there are a couple series that I like to support just because I like the anime. I have a lot of the ReZero books.
Okay.
I have the World End series.
Okay.
Only like 5 books. I think those are the only 2 that I own, but I own most of them. I haven't read them yet. They're all on my bookshelf. I'm just collecting them at this point because I want to support the series. I want to get more of it.
So, well, okay, you haven't had time for that. You support the series. So, which isekai world, other than your own, would you like to end up in?
Oh Lord. To end up in personally, that's a tough sell because most of the ones I watch, all the people are very miserable. I mean, Konosuba, that seems kind of fun. But at the time when I started writing Restart Again, I had just finished Shield Hero.
Okay.
Which I enjoyed, but that seems a little miserable.
Yeah.
You could probably see a couple parallels between, reluctant, bitter heroes with my character and the Shield Hero. And then, of course, I love ReZero. Definitely don't want to end up there.
Yeah, that's
that does not seem like a good time.
Otto is best girl. Yeah, hey, and you definitely don't want to end up in Grimgar, of Fantasy and Ash.
Oh yes,
that is an amazing series. Like the series and the book series are both very good. The series impressed the hell out of me because every backdrop was like a masterful watercolor. and the stories they tell it's about a soldier's life. It is about the slog. It's about the daily, just
Yeah.
unrelenting grind of doing of battle, and the up close and personal, like, to stab someone, whether it be a goblin or not, you've got to be right on top of them, and
Right.
you feel that knife punching through the skin, and you see the trauma just gradually build in these kids. It's an excellent series. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I have yet to find a very lovely isekai world to drop into. There's some
Yeah.
nice fantasy worlds I've enjoyed, but as far as, yeah, an isekai, to be a place to be isekai'd, you know, I'm not quite sure. I just do know that wherever isekai'd world I'm in, I would like to have a harem, please.
Yeah.
Surrounded by cute girls, that wouldn't be bad. Hey, up until recently, the slime verse was very peaceful. So
That's true.
up
I'm
until,
uh
up until
I'm
recently,
slow on that one, but I'm watching through it right now.
yeah. The Slime Diaries, that just recently came out, takes place before the events of the recent season.
Okay.
So it's kind of like an insert, and it is canon, but it's a slice of life in that it talks about the nation of monsters and the people that live in it, and it's very cute. It's got a nice softer tone to it, but it is canon, and yeah, it's fun diversion. You don't
That sounds
have
kind of nice.
you don't have to see it to understand the main slime timeline,
Hmm.
but it is nice to be like, oh, this kind of fleshes out. You really feel the people in this town have personalities and identities other than our core set of characters, and it's a really nice way to do that one. So I recommend, when you get the chance, just if you need something light and fluffy, that's a good choice.
Yeah. You definitely do need those light and fluffy shows every once in a while too.
Oh yeah, I'm kind of famous for liking the light and fluffy shows. Yeah, there's I I really like I like my cute girls wearing frilly outfits, fighting magical mechano beasts with a little side of Yuri. Those cute, just cute stories. I eat them up, which is ridiculous for
Yeah,
a
there's
middle.
nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong
Yeah,
with that.
but it definitely, I got a reputation at for the website that I do work for, and yeah, as, oh, like Assault Lily Bouquet sounds like a Zeke show. So yeah, but I really want to thank you. I know it's a work night. It's approaching in on early evening here, and I'd really like to thank you for coming on and talking with us today. We can find your stuff about you and your books on adamladner.com. We can find you on Twitter. We still find you at RA Adam Ladner?
That is correct.
All right. And your books are for sale on Amazon. Any other platforms you should go to?
They're all through Amazon.
All right. Sounds good. And if anybody who's listening wants to hear more things like this, more interviews with creators about creating, give us a subscribe and a like. And I know that Adam probably feels the same way, that every creator's voice deserves that chance to be heard. And I hope you take time to subscribe to WLNM. And until next time, keep reading.
This has been a WLNM podcast.